Testament in a way that Nicodemus should understand. Now, this is where it starts to get a little thick for us. Because remember, these guys have this base of knowledge rooted in the Old Testament. They have the whole Old Testament memorized. So they can just it's kind of like guys playing mental chess, like over the phone. Or, and they could say G4 to G, F6. And then the other chess player knows where it is. These are really smart guys who do this. Jesus and Nicodemus are smart guys. They're operating from the Old Testament here, and we're going to do our best to follow them. Jesus says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God." In other words, he can't be born again. And of course, our obvious question is, what does Jesus mean by being born of water and the Spirit? One idea here is that this refers to two births. The first birth is natural, so this is like when you were born as a baby, and the second one is your spiritual birthday. When you are born again, the Spirit of God enters your life and you trust in Jesus. And while that idea is very attractive and pretty close to the truth, it's problematic in the text because the Jews never associated water with the birth of a baby. They didn't have water births like some of us who were trendy, maybe. It wasn't a thing. So what does it mean then? Well, it refers to cleansing, as in water, and renewal in the Spirit. And the reason why this idea of cleansing and renewal is the better idea is that this is how the Old Testament talks about what the Son of Man, the Messiah, Jesus, is going to do when he comes and he gathers up Israel and everybody else who will trust in him. Look back. Oh, you're going to love this. Look back to Ezekiel. Can we go to Ezekiel for a second? Everybody take 15 minutes and fumble around in your Bibles. Look at the table of contents. It's a bigger book in the Old Testament. We go very seldom to the book of Ezekiel. But I want to look at a couple of verses here. This is Ezekiel 36. Ezekiel 36, verses 25, 26, and 27. So the prophet Ezekiel is talking about what God is going to do in regathering Israel, and we now know everybody else, when the Son of Man comes, when Messiah comes, this very thing that Jesus and Nicodemus are talking about. Notice how Ezekiel 36, this passage that Jesus and Nicodemus would have known, how it talks about the new birth. Okay? Even if you're still looking for it, I'm going to read it. Ezekiel 36, 25, 26, 27. I will sprinkle clean water on you, Israel, and you shall be clean from all your uncleanness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you, and I will give you a new heart and a new spirit I will put within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. Flesh here is a good thing. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. And then he goes on for several chapters. The next chapter is about the valley of dry bones, where everybody is dead. You're dead. You're deader than dead. All right, spiritually, you're dead. You're so dead, your bones are dry, and the bones are scattered. And yet God is going to bring all those bones together, and he's going to put flesh on those bones, and he's going to raise those people to new life. And it's this picture of the new birth that Jesus brings about, not just at the end of time, but at the moment when anybody depends on him. That's what's going on here. Jesus is saying, Nicodemus, you need to have this new birth experience. It's going to cleanse you, and it's going to regenerate your heart so that now you live before me in a new condition, and you can understand who I truly am. That's what's going on with water and the Spirit. And then Jesus goes on and he explains that like produces like. That which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of spirit is spirit. In other words, cats produce other cats. Dogs produce dogs. Trees produce trees. Weeds produce weeds. Grass produces grass. Birds produce birds. Should we go on? Like produces like. And then Jesus' point, the natural fallen nature of mankind. That's what he means by flesh produces after its kind. Flesh produces flesh. And the Spirit of God brings about transformation of the spirit of man after the likeness of God's Spirit. So there's this new birth that is about being born once again and is from above, is going to produce people in the likeness of Jesus through the Spirit of Jesus, who is the only one who can bring about this transformation of the human person. That's what that image is about. And then Jesus tells Nicodemus that he ought to know this already. And this is where Jesus gets kind of cryptic, and he starts talking about the wind, and we're not quite sure why you doing this, Jesus, but it helps to know that the word for wind and the word for spirit, as in the Holy Spirit, is the Hebrew word. It's the same word, ruach, in the Hebrew, and he compares the Spirit of God to the wind, and he describes how we can't see the wind, but you can see its effects. That's the idea. So when a person is born again, he or she knows it, kind of like Samuel. Bumping along, I'm Christian, I'm Protestant, I'm Catholic, I'm, whatever affiliation he's in. And then he trusts Jesus, and he's born again, and he knows it. And now when we're born again, we know, and very important, we care about God's things. And where the Spirit works, the effects are undeniable and unmistakable. On Friday, I asked, I'm starting to learn to use AI, which is a little scary. But I said, hey, AI, I didn't actually say that. I said, how many Americans are there? And the answer is of Friday morning was that there are now 340 million Americans. We're still growing as a country. That's good. And then I asked an interesting question. How many of these Americans believe they are born again? It's fascinating. So how many believe, like Nicodemus, that they are born again? And I got reference to a couple of different studies. One of them said 33% of Americans believe they are born again. The other one said 70%. So those are, it shows that there's some overlap. No, there's some confusion about what this is about. Possibly the majority of Americans believe that they are born again out of 340 million people. Here's my question. Do you think it's possible that there are many like Nicodemus who have an incomplete, even a wrong understanding of who Jesus is, and until something happens to change their condition, they don't even know how to answer the question. They don't even know what they don't know. What has to happen for a person to be born again? And again, our central question, who is the person who is born again? Look at verses 9 to 15. We're almost done, but this is critical. This is so important. This is the necessary beliefs of the new birth. There's one more exchange of questions here. Nicodemus, he's heard all of this, and I think he's tracking with these Old Testament passages. He doesn't have to fumble around in the book of Ezekiel to find it. He's got it memorized. I think they're communicating about the passages. But Nicodemus says, how can this be? He just can't get it. This is a category that he doesn't have. And then Jesus, he rebukes him a little bit. How are you a teacher and yet you don't know the most basic things about how God works? And he goes on, if I can't tell you basic things, that's what I think he means by earthly things, how am I going to tell you about the wonders of spiritual reality? If you don't even know how to be born again and you aren't, then how am I going to tell you who I am as the Son of Man who has control over the heavenlies and has now come to earth in the incarnation, and let alone what I'm about to do at the cross and at the tomb? How are you going to get any of that if you don't even know the first thing? And then Jesus talks about himself. No one else, and that's how I would translate that, no one else except me has gone up into heaven itself except me, the one who came from God. So in other words, being born again means believing something particular about Jesus. What is it? And at this point, Jesus really makes us go cross-eyed, because he starts talking about this snake in the wilderness, and we're like, Jesus, I was kind of following you, but now you're taking me into the wilderness, and oh my goodness, what's going on? Hey, go back to Numbers. This is the second and last passage we're going to look at together. And Nicodemus knew this, Jesus knew it, we need to look it up. Numbers chapter 21. Numbers 21, so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. Now we're in the fourth book of the Old Testament, fourth book from the beginning. We're in Numbers 21. Israel is in the wilderness and they are sinning. They are grumbling, they're walking away from God. And I'm not going to totally preach this passage, so we won't entirely figure it out, but just look at least at what happened, okay? Verse 4, from Mount Hor they set out by the way to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom, and the people became impatient on the way, and the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? So they don't trust God. For there is no food and no water, and we loathe this worthless food. Then the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, so that many people of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned. That's really important. We have sinned, they said. They recognized it. For we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed for the people, and the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole. And everyone who is bitten, very important, when he sees it shall live. So Moses made a bronze serpent and set it on a pole. And if a serpent bit anyone, he would look at the bronze serpent and live. Okay, we're not going to fully explain that passage, but that's what happened. Really important to recognize that Israel, especially the ones who were saved, knew they were snake bit. They looked at this image and they were healed. And it's important to know this word that Jesus uses, we translate it as lifted up 4 times in the New Testament. It means to be exalted. So what Jesus is saying is that you have to know that I'm going to be exalted where? at the cross. It's important that the serpent was lifted up. It's a picture of Jesus being lifted up at the cross. And I'm going to be exalted again at the empty tomb, and then when I ascend to the Father. And very, very important, you have to know that you're snake bit. You have to know that you are dead and as good as dead. Israel wasn't healed until they said, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dead. Look at the snake, because God told me to, that's the only reason, and then I'm healed. So we have an answer to the question, who is the person who is born again? And the answer is that the person who is born again believes that, number one, Jesus died and was lifted up at death on the cross. Two, Jesus was raised in glory. That's the resurrection. And then, very important, this person must know that he or she must be born again. We are snake bit. We are dead without Jesus. That's the answer to the question. Whatever happened to Nicodemus? We see him appear a couple of other times in John, most importantly in John 19. Remember what happens in John 19? Jesus has been lifted up in death at the cross, and he has now died. He has given his spirit to the Father, but his body is still on the cross. Who takes his body off the cross? Two guys, Joseph of Arimathea, who was the money behind the project, all right? He paid for the tomb, and Nicodemus. Nicodemus is there at the end, and I believe that somewhere along the way, we see him again in chapter 7 where he is advocating for Jesus. Somewhere along the way, Nicodemus gets it. Maybe at the cross when Jesus died, and he trusts in Jesus, and he is born again. You know, there are many people like Nicodemus who start out with an inadequate knowledge of Jesus, and they don't know what they don't know. And then they hear the good news about Jesus, and this is true for all of us who are born again. We hear the good news about Jesus, and God grants the knowledge that we need about Jesus. And with this work of the Spirit comes at the same time a renewed condition. We call it regeneration. It happens in the giving of the gospel. It happens when the Spirit of God comes on a person and enables belief, and this person knows that Jesus died, he was raised, and that he or she must be born again. And they believe in Jesus of the cross and the Jesus of the empty tomb, and they're born again. And so I want to ask you this morning, is your understanding of Jesus that of a born-again person? Do you believe that he died for you? Do you believe that Jesus was lifted up at the tomb? He was lifted up into new life, and then again to the Father. He was exalted to the Father. And then very, very critical, do you believe that you must be born again? That before you trust in Jesus, you are spiritually dead? You can't get it. You don't know what you don't know. You're not even in the right condition to receive the gospel. And if you have trusted in that Jesus, you are born again. There's another possibility, and it's the possibility of so many people, and that is that you believe in the Jesus who just does stuff for you. You were like Samuel before he stood up and he said, I'm born again. You kind of believe loosely in Jesus, and this Jesus is a good idea, and this Jesus helps me when I'm down or discouraged, and I need to get bumped up by Jesus, and he's just kind of this good idea. If that is your position, if that is your condition, you need to be born again in order to enter the kingdom of God, in order to understand who Jesus is. I told you at the beginning you're going to have an opportunity to be born again. Here's what we're going to do, and I haven't overthought this. Okay, Matt's going to help. We're going to sing a song, just like we always do. Our closing song before Brad gets up and does the announcements. During this last song that Matt's going to lead us in, we're all going to stand up. I'm going to go down there by the table, and I'm just going to stand there. And if today God did something really special in you, and you understood something about Jesus that you've not understood before, I want you to come down here and pray with me. And I'm just going to be excited with you. I'm just going to put my arm on your shoulder, and I'm just going to thank Jesus for who he is. And I'm going to recognize your belief in Jesus. And we're going to pray together. And if you want to keep talking about it, we're going to be in the old office area during the whole second hour. You can come back there too. Okay? And I've not over-planned this, and I've got some other, I don't know, if there's more than one person, then I got some other people who are going to help. But I'm just going to be down there, and we're going to trust Jesus to work in our hearts. Maybe you are born again. Then just pray for everybody else here and be thankful. And then when Matt's done with the song, Brad's going to come up and we'll have some announcements. Matt, let's sing.
Let's stand. When this life of trials tests my faith, I set my hope on Jesus. When the questions come and doubts remain, I set my hope on Jesus. For the deepest wounds that time won't heal, there's a joy that runs still deeper. There's a truth that's more than all I feel. I set my hope on Jesus. I set my hope on Jesus, my rock, my only trust, who set his heart upon me first. I set my hope on Jesus. Though I falter in this war with sin, I set my hope on Jesus. When I fail the fight and sink within, I set my hope on Jesus. Though the shame would drown me in its sea, and I dread the waves of justice, I will cast my life on Calvary. I set my hope on Jesus. I set my hope on Jesus, my rock, my only trust, who set his heart upon me first. I set my hope on Jesus. I set my hope on Jesus, my rock, my only trust, who set his heart upon me first. I set my hope on Jesus. Though the world calls me to leave my Lord, I set my hope on Jesus. Though it offers all its vain rewards, I set my hope on Jesus. Though this heart of mine is prone to stray, give me grace enough to finish till I worship on upon me first. I set my hope on Jesus. I set my hope on Jesus, my rock, my only trust, who set his heart upon me first. I set my hope on Jesus. I set my hope on Jesus.
All right. We have a regular practice at our house Sunday nights. We sit down and say, okay, what's going on this week? Who's got what? Seth, do you have to get up early for jazz band on Tuesday? Or are we staying up late this night for this? So here's our family sit down right now for this Sunday, for the week coming up, all right? Lots going on that we invite you to be a part of. There's youth and children going on. High school youth group is Sojourn, that's tonight. Invite you to the youth center for that in Reblake. And then on Wednesday night, Embark is the middle school youth group, same place. And then True Seekers here on Wednesday nights for the younger kids. Women's Bible study will resume this week, Thursday or Friday. You have two options there. I think they took this week off because of the ladies' retreat going on. And then men, remember that Saturday mornings, 8:30 to 10, is Bible study. Going through the No More Excuses book at the GYC, 8:30 to 10. And then we also have this coming Saturday, a GYC work day. So following that, the guys meeting there at 10, from 10:30 to 2:30, we invite you to come help clean or work on projects at the youth center. If you know or don't know what any of those tools do, you're still invited to come help be a part of that, and they'll have some food for you. There's some contact information in the bulletin if you could let Jared know you're coming, or you could sign up at the kiosk there. And then exciting ladies bus shopping trip coming up in November. And again, we're looking for a minimum number by November 1st to make sure that bus can go. You can contact K-Hints or Java Journey, and there's some contact information in your bulletin as well for those individuals. Okay, and then today, there's still more going on. Nursery continues to be available through the Moore Hour. The DL kids, pre-K through 5, are in the Upper Grove across the way. Middle schoolers in the Lower Grove, high schoolers, we're starting our study together at the Fireside Room. I can join Amanda and I there. And then adults, you have 3 opportunities, as Pastor mentioned today. One, the grace-based parenting class, which will happen in the sanctuary here. That is Ron and Paula and Gary and Shelley. And they just want to make sure that you know that all are welcome. If you're a parent, a grandparent, even someone just working with kids, you have nieces, nephews, whatever it is, that'd be great. Thoughtful, helpful ideas as you work with those kids. So stay in here for that. The coffee and conversation in the lobby. We do have tea and water if you don't drink coffee, but you're invited for that as well. And then the message, discussion, and prayer. You can meet Pastor in the back in the new meeting area. Check out that picture if you've been back there. It doesn't look maybe what it used to look like. So check out the new meeting area across the way. Stay in the upper level and keep walking that way. Okay. I think I made it through, except for there's one more special announcement that I'm going to invite Tim up to give. Tim is our elder chairman. Tim Peterson, take it away.
Thank you. Hey, the month of October is Pastor Appreciation Month. I know you're cringing over there, Brian. So we would like, as a Woodland family, to have an opportunity to give a special, thank you, honestly, is what it is. And starting next week and the following week, we're going to have a little box of some kind out in the lobby where you can drop a note, a letter, a card, just something that will be thoughtful and be meaningful and express your appreciation to Brian, Amanda, and to Michael, and to Melody. So at the end of the month, we'll give those to them, and we'll just want to honor them. So please fellowship together, enjoy all those things that Brad just told you. Be blessed. Thank you.